Hello viewers, and today for another mass session I am delighted to be joined by Ben McMahon, the MD at Collaborate Global, where today we're going to be discussing hybrid and virtual events and what the future looks like in the event space. How are you, Ben?
Yeah, great. Nice to be here, Martin. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Now we're obviously keen for your expert insight, but I thought we'd maybe start with a bit of a beginner's question. To the uninitiated, how do we sort of define what the difference is between a hybrid event and what many people call a virtual event? I think I'm an odd one. I call them online events. But how do we sort of differentiate between the two?
Actually, you know what? It sounds a basic question, but I think it's a really good one. And I think actually at the moment, because everything is moving so fast paced and things are developing, that actually trying to get basic terminology right really helps, particularly getting a brief and working with clients to actually understand what they want to achieve. So for us, the difference between a hybrid and a virtual really is the space that you're executing your experience in. So if it's a hybrid event for us, that means that there's an element of physical interactivity with people around in a known physical space. So even if that's a broadcast studio, physically kind of relating to people and communicating to people on a stage in a physical area. And virtual for us is a virtual experience in a virtual space. So it's something that isn't physical, it's imagined, it's produced in a way that you're taking somebody to something that doesn't physically exist. And I think for us that both have got a vital role. But for us, hybrid is where it's going to end up, because it's still based around that human interactivity, that human touch, that point of reference and emotion. And I think the virtual part just allows people in the short term, when obviously physical and social mobility is heavily restricted, still trying to create an experience that riffs on what people used to feel in a physical event. So that's how we differentiate them.
I guess it always comes down to the client's kind of business objective at the end of the day. But I want to just kind of like expand on hybrid events really, and how we think they're going to shape the future going forward. I don't fully buy into this idea of new normal. I believe it's just sort of an evolution of where our industry is going. But I think you'd be a fool to think that hybrid events aren't going to be a more common mainstay going forward. How do you think they are going to shape how we as an industry operate and fulfill our clients' needs?
I agree with you, Martin. I mean, for us, as you said, hybrid is not going to be something that's either turned on or turned off. It's not, once social mobility is the norm again, we're suddenly go, we don't need to do hybrid events anymore. Because in essence, hybrid events have been performed and produced for years. They just become a focus point because the percentage of the digital aspect has kind of greatly overplayed the analog aspect of it. So, if you take, I guess a prime example would be if you take Speedweek at Goodwood that we've just recently been involved with. That was a huge trackside event, 4 days, including media day, etc. There was about 3,000 people there, not as public, but obviously producing the physical track spectaculars and all the rest of it. You kind of ask yourself the question, why would you go into next summer when that event could happen at the Festival of Speed or Revival? Why would you go in not having the enhanced broadcast part of it and just relying on ticketed sales? And I think brands that are planning for 2021 activities that we're talking to see that, because you've got a benefit of how you can produce extended digital content and build a much bigger audience, but then really focusing on people actually still coming and connecting and interacting with the brands and meeting people and networking, etc. And all it does, if you plan to do a hybrid, you can't fail, because all you're doing is increasing the percentage of digital or physical. So whether you have 5 people there, you've still got a set and an experience, or you have 50,000 people. And I think that's why I don't think it will ever go back to not wanting to do that extended broadcast.
Absolutely. I want to come back to Speedweek at Goodwood, because I used to work in motorsport, massive motorsport nut. So we're going to come back to that one. That'll be my own pleasure. But I just wanted to maybe touch on some, hopefully, advice for anyone sort of watching this video, really, when it comes to making a decision to decide whether or not you go hybrid or virtual only for your event? How do you kind of make that critical decision to decide which format is best to suit your objectives?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the advice that we're giving clients at the moment is imagine, focus on what the reason why you want to do this piece of activation or this piece of activity. Forget whether it's hybrid, whether it's virtual, whether it's online, whatever that phraseology is. Go back 2019, 2018, whenever it was. What was the objectives for you doing that piece of activity? What did you want to achieve? Who did you want to talk to? How did you want to talk to them? And what did you want them to go away with? And that basically just frames the storyboard or the narrative for doing that event. And I think the same for us is with virtual and hybrid. So it's kind of like focus on what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to convey deep, meaningful, connected brand values, product launches, demonstrations, etc., then maybe you need an immersive platform that hybrid would give you to tell that story. If you're trying to reconnect with your own business because you've all been scattered across the world or regional market, and you're just trying to get everybody back focused on what's going on for next quarter or next year, get people networking, talking to each other, spending time with each other, but in a branded corporate space, then go virtual. I mean, I don't want to say virtual is cheaper than hybrid or hybrid's more expensive than it, but I guess it's like anything. The more senses and the deeper your exploratory experience goes, you're going to have to make sure the kind of budget and planning to go along. So I would probably say focus on the reason why you're doing it, think about what you want to invest, and then let your partner take you to the relevant solution.
Absolutely. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's all about engagement. What is an event? What is an experience without engagement? Yeah. That's what it comes down to, I guess. So kind of with that in mind then, what factors do you kind of have to think about when it comes to planning content? I mean, how is content for a hybrid setting going to be different to content for an online setting, and how is that weighted against content in a live setting? For example, all the events I generally go to, content sessions or keynote sessions, always 40 minutes. Why is it 40 minutes? Sometimes I get lost after 20.
That's spot on. I think it's that, we actually go down to like that whole 90 second journey, as in even if you're doing something for 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, just the connection point is, in our opinion, around those 90 seconds rivets of taking the customers through. So connectivity, how do you kind of create the content? Your stuff, content is so important, and it's content with context. It's not just about putting stuff up for the sake of it. I think you've got to try so much harder when you have got a remote audience, because you haven't got the benefit of the sense of the human emotions that we've spent thousands of years honing when we're all together. But then let's not forget that, carefully curated, powerful digital content in these virtual hybrid spaces can take you to places or give you experiences that you never could in the physical world. So again, for us, it's the storyboard and the vision of why you're doing it, what you want to achieve. And again, we go at this from a very strict or strong broadcast sense. For us, it's entertainment. At the end of the day, we're competing with Netflix, with BBC, with Warner Brothers, with however people are being entertained on screens across the world. That's what you're competing with. So like you said, you've got to keep people's attention. You've got to kind of help them go through the story. You've got to let them know what they're coming, what to expect. Give them surprises, give them things to think about and take away. And those moments, as you say, just powerful connectivity. And also one last bit on that content, it doesn't always have to be about the screen content. So we work a lot with like the analog flip. So in the good old times, physical, most of it was analog, and then you had the digital aspect that supported it. Well, now it's obviously all digital, and we're really focusing on the analog because it gets the cut through. So care packages, stuff that you could be sat at your desk, Martin, playing with, touching, smelling, opening as part of it, putting a silly hat on, telling a joke, just stuff that gets cut through. It's like now receiving a postcard in the post, or a letter gets more cut through than an email. It's that analog rift, I guess, that is still part of that content conversation. So hopefully that gives some insight in terms of how we're revising the content aspect of these events.
Absolutely. I'm always overwhelmed with excitement when I get the reminder from the DVLA about my car tax come through on the post, because I always end up deleting the email. I'll back you up on that. Right, and on the subject of cars, I can hold on no longer. I want to kind of learn a little bit more about what you did at Goodwood. Yeah. For Speedweek, and I love the venue. I've always gone to the Revival, big motorsport fanatic. So you've got a tough audience to impress. Tell me, what did you guys actually do?
Well, I'm glad you loved it. I mean, basically, Speedweek was a brand new platform that Goodwood came up with. In essence, it was an answer to 2020's content pieces from Goodwood. You couldn't do Revival. FOS obviously got postponed and then cancelled. So it was kind of like the best of all those kind of automotive inspired activities there. And in essence, it was behind closed doors. So they created this hybrid product and lit up with Revival. So lit up the motor circuit. They had past, present, and future was the three main days, and basically hosted what Goodwood are great at doing, is just bringing the best cars, the best drivers, the best entertainment, and framed as a hybrid broadcast. So they partnered up with ITV and obviously broadcast 24/7 from their own platforms. So what we ended up doing with working with Goodwood was we were producing some documentaries. So we worked on Racing Minds, which saw Mark Webber jump in one of the Porsche Taycans, Rory Reid. We did basically a whole documentary about how motorsport and stress and performance can be measured and influenced by the latest tech. So we strapped various gadgets on people, sent them around the track and measured how excited and what we could learn from them. So that was pretty cool. Did some live sequences with them. And then we did a lot of work with Sennheiser. And this is a really interesting point, that 360 cameras that we set up, 360 binaural sound that you kind of did as an overlay. And you think, okay, that's cool. It's quite, we've all spent time with 360 cameras. So we did a live stream to Facebook Live in 4K. And it just goes to show you that just bringing people like yourself, Martin, that are like fanatics about automotive, and giving them the option to jump into the pit lane, control the 360 camera, see what they want to see, hear what they want to see. There were 60,000 people on Friday afternoon on that stream. And it just thinking about getting somebody connected with something that they love in a personal way, it doesn't have to be much cleverer than that. And I think, lots have been learned. And like I said, again, for us, is like, why would you go back to just a ticketed event? Absolutely, everybody wants to see the crowds there, adds to the occasion. But the fact that 100,000, 200,000 people globally could kind of like dial in whenever they wanted to consume it. It was on ITV highlights. It was cool. You would have loved it. Have a look at it if you haven't seen it online.
Absolutely. It just it does kind of like hit you, doesn't it? At the end of the day, that's what this industry does. We create experiences. It's not just John Major in front of a PowerPoint presentation and a pie chart. Those days are long gone. This is exactly the sort of engagement that really just innovates and inspires and just kind of like gets everyone together, and it just sounds really good. So I just wanted to then close off then with one last question, or rather from you, a piece of advice to our audience. What advice would you give to an organizer thinking about adding hybrid elements to an event? Something that we've spoken about. Where do they start? What key questions should they ask themselves?
Okay, so advice to an organizer. Again, let's not use tech. If you're taking the hybrid element to it, there's lots of extended broadcasting techniques you can use. Some really cool cutting edge stuff, but don't do it for the sake of doing it. People have been there. It's like VR goggles. Don't just give people VR goggles. If you've got a cool virtual experience that you want to take somebody to, use the goggles. And I guess it's a bit like the hybrid element. And you're right to say, if you don't have to do the whole thing as a hybrid. There could just be elements, key performances that you kind of just bring alive as part of an overall event. So I go back to saying advice. Think about the reasons and what you're trying to achieve. Think about what you want as a takeaway. Be honest with yourself in terms of understanding what you've got as an organizer to bring to the table. So content, what have you got to share? Do you need it to be produced from scratch, or have you got some of that? Be realistic from a budget point of view. Doing this stuff well isn't a cheaper alternative. it needs to be treated with the same respect as we always did in the virtual world. You're just not building it out of bricks, you're building it out of pixels. So it's just a different. So make sure your budget's realistic, focus on the reasons for doing it, and find the right partner that is focused in that way. Too many times I see people's responses like, oh, but we've got this platform, use our platform. And don't worry about the platform. It's the same way as when we were building stuff. When did the client ever say, oh, go through a thing, oh, choose us because we use 18 mil ply? Who cares? It's just like, what does it look like? What does it need to do? And what is it delivering for you? You're never judged on how well it was made. It was how well it was executed and what you got out of it. And I think everyone's trying to learn, but just partner with the right people, focus on what you're trying to achieve, and make sure you've got a reasonable budget and internal resource to deliver it. Because nobody just wants to get the keys to something they don't understand. They want it to be produced with them. So yeah, I think it's exciting. There's huge amounts of opportunity. I don't think it's either one or the other, as you know, Martin, and we just talked about. It's seizing some really cool and creative opportunities. And like you said at the beginning, it's not about when it goes back to normal. It's about how we can make this better and take the benefits of both sides of it. And we've got a cool space. It'd be good.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's what all this comes down to. At the end of the day, the industry now is probably at the bottom of the trough before we start coming back in 2021. This is our opportunity as an industry to lead and to innovate, because we are the horizontal across all these other sectors. And I've got no doubt in my mind, Ben, that you and the team will be there to help your clients develop and engage their audiences to new levels in 2021.
Thank you very much, Martin.
All right, Ben, I'll let you crack on. Thanks very much.